Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure and a joy to be here. And I think after that very moving speech from Yarden, you have a little bit of an idea of the trauma, the sadness, the shock that we've been through over the last 9 months. I can't begin to describe how difficult it has been. But today I'm here with so much gratitude for our friends, because it is only you, our friends, that have reminded us that we're not alone. You've shown up in Israel, you've shown up for us everywhere around the world, and we felt that much less lonely because we know that as opposed to 80 years ago, this time we've got you, we've got our friends in CUFI, and so we're so grateful. I want to personally thank Pastor Hagee and Diane for the incredible support they've been providing to Israel for so many years, for their love for Jerusalem, their genuine advocacy, for changing the conversation in the Christian world. Again, this is something that we not take for granted in Israel, and we're so grateful. So thank you so much for having me here. So today I was asked to talk a little bit about media bias. Where do I start? I'm going to start by talking about what happened on the morning of October 7th from my perspective in my home with the media. So on October 7th, as you know, was not just a Sabbath, but it was a very special Jewish holiday, Simchat Torah, a happy holiday. And one of my children wakes me up early in the morning and said, "Mom, there's sirens." Now you have to understand, in Jerusalem, there's barely any sirens because Jerusalem's population is 40% Muslim. And so they don't throw rockets at Jerusalem just in case they may hit and kill Muslims. And also because we've got the Golden Dome, and I call the Golden Dome our Iron Dome in Jerusalem. And so normally they don't send any type of rockets. And there were 5 sirens. And at that point, I instinctively knew something horrible was happening. So even though I am Sabbath observant, I switched on my phone to see what was going on that morning. And I realized that we were at war. And I realized that something very different than what we've known was going on. And I have to give you a little bit of context, the word we don't like. But when my husband and I moved to Jerusalem in 2001, this was the second Intifada. The second Intifada happened because Israel had the audacity to, like Pastor Hagee said this morning, to offer Arafat everything he said he wanted. He didn't say no and said, let's renegotiate. No, he said no, and he started urban warfare on the streets of Jerusalem. Thousands of people were killed, innocent people were killed in buses and in cafes because of that dream that we all had that we wanted peace. So that's Jerusalem, and that's the context. And I knew that something really bad was happening. And so a friend of mine who's a journalist in the Arab world started sending me messages. And the next thing I see, the BBC's calling me. I'm like, why is the BBC calling me? And I realized that nobody from Israel was actually speaking. The IDF spokespeople were, confused about what was going on. There was nobody answering anywhere in government. Everybody was still in shock. And at that point, I thought to myself, well, if they're calling me, the deputy mayor of Jerusalem, it means they must have called another few people and nobody answered. And so God has put me in this world for this moment. And I'm going to answer the phone. And so from that first morning, I started telling the world the horrible massacre that was going on. But even from those first moments, I knew that maybe, maximum, we were going to have 2 days of grace by the world, 2 days of empathy, 3 days perhaps. Unfortunately, I was right. In Europe, after a day, it started already becoming recriminatory. But you did it And I kept reminding people, listen, we left Gaza in 2005. Gaza is not under occupation. Nobody knew. Because when you tell a lie enough times, it sticks. It sticks. And for 20 years, that lie has been told. Since the Second Intifada, when a war started against us, an urban warfare, for us offering peace, the world has turned upside down. And the media's turned upside down. And I was doing media in Spanish as well. Hablo español, soy de Gibraltar. And yeah, I know there's some Spanish-speaking friends in the audience. And in Spain, it was really bad. In Spain, from 48 hours, they were already sending and already blaming us. And I kept saying to them, but we left Gaza in 2005, but we didn't start this war. And then it followed, of course, with the BBC. And eventually, even the American mainstream media started to follow suit. They were good for about 2 weeks. Israel had not even gone into a ground invasion, and they were already blaming us for what? For being people who refuse to die because they attack us? No, we're not there anymore. And that's the problem they have with us. And so, what is actually going on? Why is the media so biased? Well, let's talk about how the media is biased first. It starts with poisonous, misleading headlines. Let me give you an example just from yesterday. The Wall Street Journal writes this morning, Israel targets Lebanon. Less than 48 hours ago, 12 beautiful children were killed, were obliterated in a soccer field. But to the Wall Street Journal, Israel targets Lebanon. Wait, it gets better. The BBC, a day ago, 11 dead in rocket attack on Israeli-occupied Golan. People, not children, people. These are just a little sample of the poisonous headlines that have indoctrinated the world so that we get idiots like those people this morning coming here thinking that they're standing for justice. Let me continue with the lies. The numbers, remember the numbers? So yes, we start from exaggerated, inflated numbers. Why? Who is their source for the numbers? Who do they not question? The Gaza Health Ministry. Who's the Gaza Health Ministry? Terrorists. You are taking your source of numbers, and somehow, miraculously, the numbers go up by the same amount every single day. Wow, how precise Israel is. And so it starts with 15, 20, 30. I was in a Piers Morgan debate, and some woman goes, there's 100,000 pregnant women in Gaza. Who's counting this exactly? Who told you? And yet the mainstream media just pick it up and they put it out there as fact. And unfortunately, so does the US State Department at some point. They're taking Gaza Health Ministry numbers. It's 5 terrorists in a tunnel. That's who they're taking the numbers from. But when they give you the numbers, they don't tell you they're combatants or they're innocent people. They don't talk about that. They say 30,000 killed. They won't tell you 15,000 of them are actual terrorists in combat. And they won't tell you that in any modern warfare, Israel has the lowest casualty of innocents than any war in 100 years. They won't tell you that. And what that leads us to conclude is that most of the media is no longer reporting the news. They are pushing an agenda. They've become political activists. That's what they're doing. And let me tell you why I know this. They want to make the news. Do you remember back in November when Gaza was running out of electricity? Do you remember that? They're on the brink of running out of electricity. Meanwhile, everybody's phone is fully charged, right? But they're in the brink of running out of electricity. They never ran out. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a new lie came out that they were on the brink of famine, when we know that we brought in 700,000 tons of aid. They have more food now than they did before the war. They won't tell you that it's Hamas preventing their people from actually getting the food and even shooting innocent people to get the food. They won't tell you that. They will put all the blame on Israel when we're not blocking any aid. It's Hamas that is stealing the aid. Another lie that they're propagating as news. They're in the brink of not having water. Again, brink of famine. I wrote on my social media recently, it's amazing how many brinks they've been on, but it never actually gets there. So that's how the media makes the news to push their own agenda. And so the question that we have to answer is why? Why? I have 3 answers, and maybe you all can think of some more. The first one is good old anti-Semitism. Let's not sugarcoat this. This, as the Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who was the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom for many years and a really incredible universalist rabbi and philosopher, said that anti-Semitism is a very clever virus. It mutates. It mutates into the shape of the scapegoatism of that day. And so 500 years ago, when my family were thrown out of Spain, it was religious. Jews were Christ killers. 100 years ago, when Hitler took millions of people to their slaughter, it was ethnic. At that point, we were of lower race. We had dirty blood. And today, the new anti-Semitism, and make no mistake, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. The new anti-Semitism is against the Jewish collective, the Jewish people in their nation state. And so that anti-Semitism is fueled by the lie that somehow we are foreign colonizers of a strange land instead of the indigenous people of Israel. Jews are from Judea. And how do we know that it's anti-Semitism? It's because they have double standards. Like I've read some of the headlines. Double standards, expecting more from Jews, expecting some kind of ultra-human way of protecting civilians in the middle of a war that we didn't start. Somehow, that's supposed to make us feel better? Oh, but we have high standards of you. You know what? Don't have double standards of me. Treat us like everybody else, because double standards is anti-Semitism. The second reason why this is happening is because, unfortunately, and it started in America, there is another virus going around, and it's called woke. And the woke virus is a cult. It's a religion. And let me tell you what this religion is all about. This religion is all about making the world very binary. Ironically, in a very non-binary world, this is very binary. It's either the oppressor or the oppressed. And God forbid Jews who have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, survived the genocide, created a country, turned it into a technological superpower, and Jews all around the world, nobody gave anything to. They built themselves from scratch. Somehow, we can never be the oppressed, because we're just too successful. We've just worked too hard. And that's a problem for the woke culture, because woke culture is all about sanctifying the victim. And it's all about looking down, what I call the bigotry of low expectation. That's the woke culture. And this, my friends, goes hand in hand with the Palestinian identity of victimhood, which the UN and the entire world have been feeding for almost 80 years. 80 years. It goes perfect with the woke, because not only have they made victimhood their identity, they've made it into a racket. They make money from this victimhood. They get billions and billions of dollars, and they don't have to do anything, because, you know, as long as you can punch at the Jews, you're okay. So it's become a racket, it's corrupt, and this, all that aid from around the world is what's keeping the Palestinians without any type of autonomy of self-determination, because it pays, and that's why they're there. And this goes perfectly hand in hand with woke, and this is what the mainstream media today represents in this country and around the world. And finally, let's not forget that there's a lot of foreign intervention in this country as well as many countries around the world. Let's start with the way that Qatar and Iran have literally bought the souls of the universities in this country and around the world, as we saw with the wonderful students yesterday that told us their truth and what's going on with them. And let's not forget that they have a very important weapon called Al Jazeera. Now, Al Jazeera I have renamed Goebbels TV, because Al Jazeera has only one purpose, and that is to delegitimize the state of Israel. And they're doing a great job. My Arab friends in Israel tell me, Fleur, you think the English one is bad? You should see the Arabic one. These are my Arab friends in Israel. They report their agenda. Their agenda is to destroy the state of Israel. And I'm very proud to say that my country has banned Al Jazeera in the last 2 months from Israel. And let me tell you who else has banned Al Jazeera. The Saudis and the Emiratis. And so if the moderate Sunni Arab world have really woken up to the fact that Al Jazeera is poison to their communities, I think the rest of the world should also wake up about that. And so the question now remains, what do we do about this? And this is where all of you come in, and this is where the wonderful work of CUFI shines through, with the work they're doing, the education that they're doing. I got a little book in my hotel room when I arrived yesterday from Israel, and it was a manual on the Israel, on the conflict, etc. And I thought it was actually excellent. I thought it was very well put together, as everything else that CUFI does. But education is the first thing that we need to be focused on. The number two thing we need to do, I want to look at Israel, at myself in the mirror. We have not formulated a strategy. We have not formulated a strategy. We have not resourced a strategy. That is on us. I'm not saying they'll hate us any less, but at least we should be in the arena, because we're fighting 3 wars. We're fighting a military war, we're fighting a diplomatic war, and we're fighting a communications war. And let me tell you, we're losing the communications war. And more than that, for the first time in Israel's history, losing the communications war is affecting our military war. So it's no longer a nice to have, it's a need to have. And myself and all of my colleagues, like the wonderful Jonathan Conricus, we will do as much as we can in Israel to make sure that this is taken seriously. Because if there is a third world war going on right now, it is a communications war. And friends, we're on the losing side at the moment, and we need to win that war. And finally, the one lie that you, better than anyone, can help us with is the fact that we're not indigenous to Israel. I come, and I was privileged enough to serve for 8 years as a city council member and deputy mayor of the city that was built by King David 3,000 years ago. 2 temples. We've been expelled from Jerusalem 25 times, raped, tortured, murdered, and we came back by the grace of God. And so don't tell us that we're foreign colonizers in our own land. You know, because you are scholars of the book, because you know that Jesus was a Jew and not a Palestinian. Did you hear that one? Yeah. And so it's through your churches, it's through your congregations, it's through your friends, through your family, that you can let everybody know that we all come from the same place, that Western values exist because of our common heritage, and that in the end, we will prevail. Am Yisrael Chai.